Some call him a nightmare, others a challenge, but there's a select group of NBA legends who knew the truth. Shaquille O'Neil was a problem. And today, we're diving into the stories of NBA legends who found themselves terrified of Shaq's power on the court.
Shaq was one of those guys that I feared.
Couldn't nobody do nothing with Shaq.
The only player ever to not shoot anything outside of the paint and dominate.
Allen Iverson. Even as fearless as he was, he had his limits.
Couldn't nobody do nothing with Shaq. Nothing. It won't even close. Shaq had to get assaulted every game. You know what I mean? Like, do you know how many times he got fouled when they didn't call it? Like this dude right here, man. I remember we was playing them, and I remember they threw it to him, and I tried to foul him before he was going up and jumping.
Playoffs?
No, I remember jumping on his back, and he took me up with him. I ain't lying, dog. And Kobe looked at me and said, "Man, what the hell is wrong with you? You trying to die? Are you trying to die?"
But if Iverson thought Shaq was a handful, he wasn't alone. Each player who crossed paths with Shaq had their own story of trying to stop the unstoppable. Take Rasheed Wallace, who knew a thing or two about physical play. But even Sheed had to admit when it came to pure, unfiltered destruction, there was only one name.
Who do you think probably the most violent dunker?
I would probably have to say Shaq. I ain't seen nobody do to a backboard, to a rim, to a support than what he did. Now, I seen cats break the rim before. You know, DeHaan broke the rim before. Stansberry break the rim before. You ain't never seen nobody break a whole goal. I would have to say Shaq is the most violent. When Shaq was in his prime, other teams would have to make sure that they have at least 2 goal supports.
This guy was a walking demolition crew. And it didn't stop there. Kenyon Martin Sr., another warrior of the paint. As for him, he realized that when Shaq backed you down, it was game over. Physically, mentally, emotionally, it was a wreck.
Well, no guard him, man. Like Father Time guarded Shaq. Trust me, like there wasn't no stopping that man, dog. The only player ever to not shoot anything outside of the paint and dominate. They put rules in, not zone, what's it called, dislodging rules, like all because of him, man. Like the back down rule, like it was Charles Barkley started, but it was for him. Because if he gets you to a certain point, it's physically a wrap.
And speaking of sticking with you, just ask Reggie Miller. He'll tell you that Shaq wasn't just physically intimidating, he was downright terrifying.
Because you were the most physically intimidating person in our league. So when whoever you hit got hit once, they felt it and they never came back. That means every time you're coming now, they're not there. That's an easier shot. You hit them one time, they're going to feel it. Look, I will say this. As many times as because we've all come down and doubled you or had to play you at some point in time, got hit, I'm surprised you didn't kill all of us. No, I'm serious.
America, I did not intentionally throw the balls.
Al Harrington. For him, guarding Shaq, let's just say his strategy boiled down to one thing: prayer.
What was it like guarding? Because they always say he's the most dominant player of all time, and peak Shaq, I just, I don't know what you can do really.
Bro, you pray. So when he was in Phoenix, he was rolling down the lane, and I rotated over to take a charge. Oh. And when I got there,
he's heavy
I had already made the commitment, and I just closed my eyes and I said, "God, please." And he hit me and fell on top of me, but it just didn't hurt. I was like surprised, like boom. And I opened my eyes and he looking right at me. He was like, "You lucky you from Jersey. Other than that, I would have killed you." He like looking dead on top of me like, "You lucky you from Jersey." I was like, thank you, big fella. But guarding Shaq was impossible, bro.
Now, if you think Harrington's memories of Shaq are intense, just wait until you hear from Isaiah Thomas. But before that, let's talk about Scottie Pippen. Even for him, a man who feared almost no one, Shaq was a different story.
I didn't fear too many players during my career, but Shaq was one of those guys that I feared. And the fact that you had to come down and double team on him, he had the speed, the power, the spins. He was just a very difficult guy for us to defend as a team. Not for me as an individual, but I had to come down and double team.
Yeah.
And that was almost worse than guarding him because he was swinging with his arms.
He had a temper.
Shaq was never, he had a temper, but you know what? Even if he turned and hit you, he'll like give you a look like,
Remember,
you're
feel that.
okay.
Yeah, remember that. Yeah.
But You know, he was just such a dominant player, and I have to agree.
And even the best defenders were terrified of Shaq. Gilbert Arenas had a front row seat to the Shaq experience, and if there's one thing he learned, it's that stopping was next to impossible without following him.
Like you talk about Shaq though, like Shaq used to run the floor and big man rules, run to the middle of the rim, turn and seal. How the hell can you stop Shaq from doing that without fouling him?
I remember I was holding both arms, like I grabbed one whole arm, because he did. I tried to take the charge, like I'm trying to take the charge, but he ain't run, so now I gotta play defense.
Yes, yes.
I'm just holding one whole muscle, right? And the rep ain't calling, like, rep, call it, shit, call it, like, call this, call it. It's like Shaq and that motherfucker, like, it's just over with, goddamn.
But if you think Arenas had it rough, wait until you hear what Brian Scalabrine went through. Scalabrine had his own Shaq encounter that left a lasting impression on his ego.
I'll tell you the story. So he gets an offensive rebound, and I'm behind him, right? And he comes down and he goes up, and I'm like, I gotta foul Shaq. And I come down, 2 hands, as hard as I can, like almost like a horse collar, but I'm just gonna like I'm gonna just destroy this man, right? Like, this is not gonna be good. And I'm afraid as I'm doing it, like, damn, this is Shaq. I can't believe I'm doing this to Shaq. It was like I hit like submit. I just went boom. He went up and he dunked it. So as soon as he went up and dunked it, I'm thinking, oh my God, he's gonna kick my ass. Like, this is like the worst position I could be in. And I almost would rather him have kicked my ass for the fact that he didn't even recognize that I was there. Like, I was thinking to myself, like, oh, shit, I'm gonna get my ass kicked by Shaq in front of everybody. And he just walked to the free throw line. Like, I felt so insignificant. I almost quit the NBA at that point. I was just like, you know what, I'm probably not an NBA player. If I gave this guy everything I had and he went up and dunked it like I wasn't even there.
I mean, after all, if giving it everything you've got means absolutely nothing to a guy like Shaq, what's left? And Channing Frye might have caught Shaq in 2005, but even that version was more than enough to leave an impression.
I caught 05 Shaq. I didn't catch. I caught 01 Shaq, bro. I caught 05 Shaq, and like you look at video and you're like, damn, he's so big. As a human being, he's not supposed to move like that. I was playing in New York, right? We're up. I know he probably went out the night before, so I'm like, I'm not gonna say shit. Right? I'm gonna just let this game go by. Third quarter comes and he's doing okay. They're down 6. He looks at me, he's like, okay, good game, Lil Fry. We gotta win this now. It basically fucks me up for the whole quarter. Like, there's no fouling. There's no, like, imagine trying to foul a tree moving like a cat and just dunk after hook shot after dunk. It's just impossible to move a human that big and that he's mean.
At number 5, we have Kobe Bryant, who witnessed the Shaq force from the closest quarters. Kobe saw it all during his career, but Shaq's overwhelming force still stood out to him.
Technical question here. Let's see how you can answer this. Who would Shaq be if he had your work ethic?
He'd be the greatest of all time. He'd be the first to tell you that, for sure. I mean, this guy was a force like I have never seen. I mean, it was crazy. You know, a guy at that size, generally guys at that size are a little timid and they don't want to be tall. They don't want to be big. Man, this dude he did not care. He was mean. He was nasty. He was competitive. He was vindictive. I wish he was in the gym. I would have had 12 rings.
Meanwhile, Yao Ming's first encounter with O'Neil left him with a comparison that's hard to forget. Yao stated,
"Yeah, what was your first impression of Shaquille O'Neil?"
Well, that's almost like a rhino on there on the court to play against. A couple of years ago, I went to Africa to see a real rhino, but it's not much of a difference.
But for Tim Legler, the prospect of facing Shaq was enough to make any player a little nervous. Shaq had the potential to turn you into a poster child for his dominance.
The closest that I saw where maybe guys were a little bit more nervous lacing up was Shaq. Because Shaq wouldn't just, go out there and outplay and dominate you statistically, like whatever. He also could potentially put you on some sort of video clip that could last a lifetime. Second year in the league, maybe he's in Orlando. I'm in Dallas. That was leaner Shaq, but picks up a loose ball in the middle of the lane. I'm the closest guy to him, and even then it was, don't let this guy get layups and dunks, chop him. He starts to rise up, and I just swung down as hard as I could across both forearms, and he kept going like full strength, and I'm feeling kind of like my body starting to go upward, like in an upward motion, like where you're thinking like he's about to take me off the ground, and you release and let go.
Our coaches would always say, if Shaq gets the ball down low and you're coming to help, you got to foul him. I remember one game you got it underneath, and I swung as hard as I possibly could.
Took the elevator ride.
Gotcha. Yeah, took the elevator ride up. Felt like I broke my wrist. To my credit, you didn't get the basket. You had to go to the free throw line, which was our goal.
He doesn't remember that. He don't remember you even hitting him.
But my point is, the refs had to deal with that. Everybody intentionally fouling him. He had to deal with it. I think things could have gotten a lot worse if he hadn't been composed and able to deal with all.
Isaiah Thomas had his fair share of tough assignments, but nothing prepared him for the sight of Shaquille O'Neal in the paint.
Shaq first came into the league, right? So I'm guarding Penny Hardaway out here, and Shaq is posted, and I'm supposed to come back and double, okay? And I forget who was guarding him. I think it was, maybe Sally or somebody. It was somebody small, right? I swear to God, now I'm supposed to go back. Don't throw it in. Okay. I look back and I'm like, ain't nobody guarding Shaq. I couldn't see the defenders. Like that's the first time I ever looked on the basketball court and somebody was standing behind somebody and you couldn't see him. I was like, oh, God, Shaq!
Now, from Isaiah's astonishment, let's jump into Richard Jefferson's equally intense experience. Jefferson kept it real when it came to Shaq's dominance.
Like, Shaq physically was the most dominant player we have ever seen, maybe will ever see, because of his sheer size, athleticism, skill, footwork, hands, everything. There was no guarding him. And let me be clear, they don't call fouls every single time you foul him. Like, there's times where he's going up for a dunk and you just do a flyby and you hit his wrist, and he's like, watch out, little fella, I'll break your wrist next time. And you're just sitting here like, if my hand was in between the rim and he was trying to dunk it, he would break my fucking wrist. That's not a lie. Backboards were getting broken. They literally had to change the physical equipment because they had never seen someone with that level of strength before. That's changing the game, right? And it's like the equipment needed to be adjusted because of him.